Jean-Christophe. Good afternoon.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Welcome. Bienvenue.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here today and for being open for this career conversation. And I would like to start by an intro. You are now working as a transition coach, and you are the founder of Out of Choice, a leadership consultancy, helping leaders in their transitions, right?
Correct.
And before that, I know that you had a solid career in the energy sector. And with that career, you have traveled a lot. You have been on expatriate assignments in Oman, in Scotland, in the UK, until you became a GM. And as a GM, you were responsible for quite a big budget in the millions, billions, I believe, right? And responsible for teams in Europe, Middle East,
Correct.
in Asia, I believe.
Correct.
And you were on the path to have even more responsibility than becoming a GM, So you are really going, climbing high on the corporate career ladder, right?
Correct.
But when you got the opportunity to really get that offer, get that role, get that responsibility that so many people aspire to, you realized something.
So let me bring you back. It was February, and it was a management meeting, my peers, my boss. And at the end of the meeting, we were talking about who was going to leave, so succession planning. And then we came to my name, and my boss excitedly said, we need to line you up for what is next. And there was a big silence. And a voice from very deep within myself, like if I become a big, deep cave, said, Léon, there won't be another job for me. I want to support you until you replace me, but I'm done. And suddenly at the time, I had no idea as to what had happened to me. But because we talk about career transition, I like maybe with hindsight, explain to you what led me to that momentum decision, which really felt an unconscious primal scream of enough. For that, I'm going to use the work of, I don't know if you know him, William Bridges. And he was a researcher who got very interested in the difference between change and transition. And to explain what happened in me, let me just make a very quick differentiation between change and transition. So imagine a couple, and one Sunday morning, the wife is having a coffee with her husband, and she says, by the way, I didn't tell you, but I want a divorce. The moment she says, I want a divorce, it's a change. In the outside world, like my primal scream of enough, in the outside world, there's a change coming. But that change was long in gestation. And that's what the transition is. The transition is like this inner psychological, emotional journey, which can be conscious or which can be very often, as it was for me, unconscious. So what led me to surprise myself in that meeting, out of the blue, saying no, had been for 3 years in the making. And the transition always starts with something ending. Always. So 3 years before, my life changed because we were coming back from Oman, young family in the Netherlands, and my wife was diagnosed with leukemia. So it came out of the blue. I will not go too much into that aspect. That could be another podcast, but let me just explain to you what it did to me at a psychological level. So something was ending. What was ending was the lives that we had. And when something ends, there are different phases. For me, it was, as far as work was concerned, there was a disengagement because physically I couldn't go to the office anymore. I was taking care of my wife. I was working online. It was back in 2013. It was well before COVID. And this was very unusual for my company to work online as I was doing. So there was a physical disengagement. But more than the physical disengagement, there was a dismantlement of my life structure, because my life structure was, because of my job, I would go to the office, and when there were priorities at work, everything would stop and I would focus on that. Now the focus was no longer there. It was the fluctuation of the health of my wife. So I could be in a call, but then she was needing me next door and I would stop the call. And so the whole structure of my life changed. But then it went deeper than that. There was a disidentification. Because from the GM that I was, I became a nurse. And I was more identified to my role as a nurse than I was to my role as a GM. But it's very disorienting because your whole identity somehow is not necessarily upside down, but there's a hole in it. And when that happens, you go through a period of revisiting the past. It's only in the present that you can really revisit what happened in the past. And there's a disenchantment. So what it means is like, I started to look at also my career with different lens. And there were a lot of things that didn't really make me happy in my career. So my enchanting stories of my life and my career was being deeply challenged. And so this led me to a phase of disorientation, which is what to believe. I no longer know who I am. I no longer know what I want. And I don't even know what the world is made of. And my cosmology and my core beliefs about what it all means were being challenged. When you get to that stage, you enter the in-between. And that's very important because when you're in the in-between in our society today, it's not a period which is well understood because we don't have rituals, a rite of passage as former societies had. So it's a very lonely period where you cannot really explain to yourself what is going on. And all the people who love you, they either want you to go back to what it was, but if it's a real transition, with your identity changing, with your worldview changing, you cannot go back. It's like you can force yourself to go to bed. You cannot force yourself to sleep. You can't force yourself to be at a table. You cannot force yourself to be hungry. So deep down, when you're in between, you know that you will not have it in yourself to force yourself to do like nothing happened. You've been changed. And then you have the people in your life who then say, okay, that's what it is. Get out of the funk. Move to the next chapter. Do something about it. Because we're a very productive society, especially in the Netherlands, where idle time, being in between, not knowing, is very confronting for most people. And so they want to accelerate you. But it's like if you are in winter and someone says, I'm done in winter in February in the Netherlands. I want summer. Yeah, good for you, but you in the Netherlands, it will take some time. Mm-hmm. So then, I guess so 3 years before the change happened, triggered the transition, I guess it took me a year and a half to realize something was ending. And then for a year and a half, I was in that limbo, no man's land. And something very interesting happens when you're in that limbo, in the no man's land, in that period of transition. You have a different relationship to the world. You're not so engaged anymore. You look at things from distance, and your life looks very transparent, very insipid. Especially, I remember the corporate fights in the office. I really believe they were like cameras. It was a social experiment. I mean, this cannot be real. But I had played that game forever. I have loved that game, and all of a sudden I couldn't relate to that game anymore. So that period is also very rich because you're not kind of in the hamster wheel. It's very disorienting, but you pick up signal, you see things so that you never have the attention or the time or the groundedness in yourself to pick up. And in my experience, I know today that it's only in this period of transition where nothing seems to happen, that's where you develop wisdom over time. It's only during this period, because that's the period where you really question yourself. And so now we're back to February. And what I didn't expect was when I basically said, it's enough. I was finishing with panache the in-between periods, and I was starting the new chapter. The new chapter led me to a transition in itself, but there was no way back. I had been pregnant for 3 years of a new version of myself I didn't know, and I was going to get to know that person.
Wow. Question. You mentioned identity, right? And if we remove the job title, if we remove the labels of husband, parent, if we remove all of those labels, during those 3 years, if I ask you now, who are you, Jean-Christophe? What is your identity?
So it's, as you ask the question, it's like, I get goose flesh, and I really suddenly have an emotional reaction to that question, because it brings me to a very vulnerable place, which is when you strip yourself from all the labels, when you really sit in your naked truth, the only thing that you see is a human in yourself. And humanity is vulnerable, and it's beautiful. It's an incredible strength in what is at times an incredible vulnerability. Yeah. So what I was during this period, I was a human being trying to get by. And you do that by instinct, you do that with your guts, you do that with your courage. It felt very much like being on a ring to do a fight that you don't want to fight, getting slammed by an opponent you don't see. And the only choice really you have is to stand up again and get slammed again. And to try to find some dignity in standing up again. Standing until you can.
What would you tell someone that is going now through that transition, that realizes that they are not happy, they are not fulfilled with what they are currently doing, yet they have the responsibilities of, they can't just resign, or they can't change their life as they wish. They have financial constraints, they have family constraints, they can't bring the changes that they want immediately. What would you tell someone navigating those transitions?
So I'd like to go back to what I mean by transition. Transition is not being between jobs. Let's say you're GM, you're not happy with your company, but you want to stay a GM and work for another company. It's not what I'm going to talk about. Because remember the story about the husband being told his wife wants a divorce. So he's going to go through that transition. But if he takes the view of, yeah, but I mean, this woman was crazy, I'm just going to find a better one, he's going to be in between women, but he's not going to radically change himself. He's not going to challenge his identity. He's not going to challenge his beliefs about love. He's simply going to continue on the same pattern. And if you remember what I was telling you, there is one phase in letting go, which is called disenchantment. And that's a very important phase, because if you don't go through disenchantment, you continue to pursue the same illusion. So it's very important that in the now you revisit the past, because the past holds a cue of the future. If you don't revisit the past, you will simply continue on the same pattern. So I'm going to talk about professional career transition, which is not in between jobs. So a person being in that period, I would first help that person normalize, I am in between. I am saying bye-bye to something. What is it? What is ending? Instead of what is next, how can I grieve what is being slowly dying? Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, I'm not a woman, but I've seen my wife 3 times being pregnant. And it's a state of doing, not doing. What I mean is there's a natural process going on in that transition, a gestation process. And if I remember my wife, she never said, well, 9 months is a bit long, and I'm starting to kind of interfere with it. I'm going to start to do the fingers and the legs by week 3 because, no. Her job was to keep the world at bay, to be actively protecting that biological process. And I think when we are in transition in the in-between, it doesn't mean being in denial of it. It's to embrace it, to learn to be comfortable in being uncomfortable, and to see that a lot of things, a lot of them non-conscious, are happening. But you have to actively protect that space by having time alone, by doing some journaling, by being very curious of things that normally you don't notice. And as I've said, in that period, you have an appreciation of the world which is different. Like, I call it a quantum flirt. It's like a bird is flying and going on the table, and it brings your attention to it. What could that mean? If it meant something, if it was happening for me, what would that mean? So it's a phase which has to be worshipped, which has to be cultivated, and where curiosity is key. And the third one, I would say, if you are in that period, is slowing down is not standing still. What is animating you? What would you like to try? Make it very low-key, being curious. A typical symptom of being in transition is you tend to reconnect with activities you used to do in the past, but you do them differently because you are no longer the same person. What do they bring to you? Engage in conversation with people that you don't know why, but you find interesting. Read books that normally you don't read. Out of all that input, all that mess, something will come out of it.
If I understand correctly, and you have not used the words, is it alignment? Try to find alignment with your own values, what you like doing, just reconnect. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So what I mean is, it's like in that period, it's like an orchestra where there is no directors, and you have a lot of instruments which are playing, and they're not in harmony and they're not in resonance because something has been lost, which is a conductor. And maybe the pianist is no longer there. It's part of what you had to say bye-bye to. And so the orchestra has to be reformed. And the new chapter will start when the alignment somehow is in place. Yeah? And it doesn't mean that when you start a new chapter, there will not be like, okay, we didn't talk about what do you need to learn, how do you make it work, etc., etc. But there is a level of readiness for that. You're ripe. It's like the fruit is ripe. For example, in my case, the new chapter was to say, I need to start where it all started. So I went back to university because at university I didn't study what I wanted to study. So I said, I liked study in a previous life, so I'm going to study again, but with who I am today, which is another 18 years old. So I went back to university to study psychology, but not necessarily because I wanted to be a psychologist or a coach at the time, simply because it felt that's what is calling me. Yeah. So picked up new skills. The whole new chapter is a transition in itself. How do you make it work? But there was a state of readiness. And I remember something which really struck me when, during that education that I was doing at university, I was doing professional coaching education on the side. It's in a Dutch context, it would be university for psychology, but I was doing kind of ABO/MBO for coaching, which is very experiential. And it was a first, we had a first weekend, it was an introduction of a program that was going to last 6 months. And I remember the master coach at the time, we had a lunch. And so I was telling him, I wonder about coaching, etc. And he said, Jean-Christophe, you are ripe. You've been ripening for as long as probably you can remember. That's what happens if you do your in-between transition correctly. You're ripe, you're ready for what is to come. And what is to come is a lot of learning and stuff, huh? But you're ready. If you push it, if you go too fast, you will not complete the next chapter as you should, I think.
And how did you go from studying and then opening in your own business and helping others?
So this was a challenge in itself, because coaching was for me a hobby. And I think when I was studying and I did my coaching practice, then I was kind of I turned the coaching into a hobby job. But when people were asking me, what do you do? I was so proud. I'm a full-time student. I am with 19 and 20 years old. Yeah, and I do coaching and I have a few clients. But I was still in the stage of the hobby job. And a big crossing of the line for me was to decide one day to professionalize. And to no longer have a hobby job, but to become a professional coach. That brings some challenges because in the hobby job, it was still a hobby. So I had to find new hobbies now because it became really my profession. And I remember very well that moment because so I was doing coaching on the side, but then I decided to move to certification. And to do certification, you have to kind of have a business because you will start to invoice and you need to do a number of hours. And I was procrastinating on that one. And I felt like I was in the Grand Canyon in the US. I was on one side of the Grand Canyon and I could see the other side. And on the other side, I was a very successful professional coach. And for a while, I was waiting for a helicopter to kind of drop a bridge. And I waited, but the bridge there was no bridge to come. And I was looking down at the canyon and it was like, oh. I've been successful in doing stuff I didn't really like, but now that stuff, I really love it. What if I don't become successful? And so for a while, I couldn't go down the canyon to find out because I had to go down so I could go up. And the trick for me was, it's not really about what happens that matters. It's how you show up when it does. And so I could trick my mind by saying, but going down the canyon, even if it doesn't work, you're going to grow so much by showing up. Showing up in maybe your disappointment, showing up with maybe the first failure in your life. Who are you going to be if it happens? And that got me excited, saying, don't know what I'm going to find at the end of the canyon, even if I'm going to go up, but I'm going to find deeper level of myself by going down. And I went down. And this was a major crossing of the line for me. To realize that to become a professional coach, doing the coaching was a hobby part. I love it. But I had to learn to love to run a business as well. And to do that together.
So it's becoming a coach, but also becoming an entrepreneur, a business owner. Right? Yeah. So developing skills in more areas. It's not. What is the most fulfilling thing about what you're currently doing?
So at a very selfish level, what I do is who I am. And I am what I do. And I think that level of congruence was something I was dreaming about. I was envying in others, but from where I came from with my education, it was like, yeah, but not in that lifetime, not for you. I mean, work is, it's not about, fulfillment. So to become this, I had to really go back to some very limiting beliefs that I had about work itself. Today I have a relationship to work which I never could have had before. And this is why I was working as I was working, because you believe somehow define your reality. I always tell my clients, you don't tell me the story of your life. You live the story you tell about your life. And so my experience of work until I became a coach was very congruent with what I believed about work. Hard, competitive, mind. And today I have a very male energy, very, very male energy. And today I have a very female energy relationship to work. Well, it's not so much about effort. It's more about flow and congruence and resonance as a guide. But this would not have been possible without some deep inner transformation. I could not be the coach I am today with the belief that I had a bad work. I would be a really hardworking coach. Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Wow. Can you give some example, of course, with maintaining confidentiality about some major impact, major transformation that you have managed to help someone achieve?
So I think there's a range.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to talk about the two extremes in the range. The people who work with me will go, they don't really have a choice, they will go very deep into the transition. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The change that is going to come out of this, I think, can be shown on two ends of the range. On one range, it's on the outside, I'm going to stay with my wife, I'm going to keep my job, and I'm going to stay where I live. But I'm going to recommit. It's like if I married a second time. I'm going to not be there because I've been drifting. I choose to. So the change is very from the inside. And this brings spark, brings lust for life in a life that they felt was tired. And so it's about the commitment. On the other hand, I have clients who have made some radical changes, moving from a very senior executive position to entering the order and becoming a monk.
Wow.
Yeah, but I am as moved, as impressed, as touched by someone who will recommit to what he has. And to really, for the first time, be out of choice in that life. And not to feel that they've ended up there and they are running out of choice, if you see what I mean. That's very powerful. And when these people do that, their relationship to their partners, to their kids, what they bring in their existing job is of a different order.
Wow. I'm going to be practical.
Yeah.
Imagine that there's someone, a leader, and has urgency into making changes. We just went through how it is important to have the inner transition so that things are really aligned.
Yeah.
But if someone tells you, I want change and I want change now, and I can't afford, I really need, where do I start?
Yeah. So it's because the way out of that is, the way out is to get it. And you might say, so practically, what do I need? But then very often, it's never going to be enough. Because you might get into solution mode with them, but then, you don't realize this, or financially, or my kids. So they're basically stuck in that phase because they are like in a cage. And that cage is being confined to what they really believe, as to what is possible and who they are. So I would say to that person, before we know in the real world what it would look like, we have to get you out of the cage. We have to make you jump into the abyss of your essence. You have to reconnect with an inspiration from within. Because you're a leader, because you have a good mind. The problem is now your mind is trying to compute what makes sense, what makes you tick. And it's not what the mind is designed for. This will have to come from within. Once we get that sparkle, hell yeah, we're going to use the mind to manifest it. What do you need to learn? What is the network you need to create? What are the financial stabilities that you need to have in place? Where do you need to challenge yourself? But I will not, well, that's why I don't work with everybody. I will not entertain going to the practical side of when people don't even know what it is. They just hear the longing for a change. And this is not enough. They need to get the calling as to what am I going to mobilize the whole of myself to achieve. Yeah. The rest is detailed histories. These people are pretty resourceful. So it's to get them out of the jail that they created for themselves. Yeah. And so my coaching is never goal-oriented. It's exploratory. We start, and we believe in an outcome which is going to bring more integration, more fulfillment, more resonance. How it looks like at the beginning, I have no idea. And so does the client realize I also don't have an idea. But what is important is to not stand still like a deer in the spotlight saying, I'm paralyzed here, because nothing is happening in that place. And this, from a stress perspective, the stress response is you escape a situation or you fight it. The flight response. But some of these people I see in transition have been not doing anything, not escaping it, not fighting it, standing still. If you do that, then you, after a while, your mind body is saying, oh, well, I mean, just fighting doesn't want to do it, flying doesn't want to do it, so you regress to a more reptilian form of response to stress, chronic stress. And that's the freeze response. You freeze. You fucking freeze. And when you do, you deplete yourself, because we were not designed to freeze. Reptiles are. They're not fast enough to escape. They're not strong enough to fight. So nature made them quite comfortable freezing, not human beings. My job is to unfreeze.
Amazing. It's amazing. What is your definition of success now, and how did it change from how it was previously?
It changed radically. I mean, my definition of success very simply was I wanted to have an external validation of my competence. I gave as an answer to success what society and education gave me: money, successful kids at school, a loving wife, a nice house. Oh, that's what I had. Today, success is coming from within. It's guided by resonance and harmony, and it's to be rediscovered every single day. It's how much resonance do I have within myself. And it does fluctuate throughout the seasons. So I don't have a dogmatic definition of success, but success in spring, when the weather is very nice and my body is calling for a lot of time and sport and in the outdoor, would be different from success in winter. So instead of a fixed, rigid, elusive, theoretical definition of success, it's something that I have to realize every single day. And it's more, it's more from within, that I know if I've been successful or not on the day. And I'm not successful every day.
Thank you for sharing that. So if you're not on the carousel of I'm not successful every day, then what is your definition of failure, and what is your definition of leadership as well?
So I used to see failure as I've made a mistake. Today, failure is proving me that I am experimenting. And what is important about experimenting, it means that I am engaging deeply with life. And I'm trying to kind of discover what there is to discover. Sometimes it's a very positive, enjoyable experience. Sometimes it's not. And I learn from that. So what is leadership? Today, in one word, I think I would define leadership by presence. The quality of presence.
Well, what do you want to achieve professionally?
So I think with what I know at this stage, I have achieved what I wanted to achieve professionally. I think the transitions that I see happening now is to slow down, to be even more intentional on what and with whom I work. Yeah, that would be that path that I'm pursuing at the moment. Yeah. So not a scaling up, a continuous recentering, because life and opportunities, they tend to tempt you and to pull you out in a lot of different directions. Yeah, so it's to be really intentional about that.
Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think would be helpful for someone in transition, or someone who wants to change but has not yet started the transition?
Yeah, I think it's what I like to say to that person is understand deeply what the process of transition is. And also realize that you've been in transitions many, many times in your life. And of all the life skills you should have learned, there was not even 1 hour on your curriculum on the 10,000 more hours that you've been at school and university to teach you about the art of transitioning. And so what you've done, like what I've done, is you go through transition with similar patterns. Like, how do you go about ending something? Are you someone at a party that goes first always, or you leave like when the crowd is leaving, or you're one of the last one, which is like, well, I mean, the party is still going on. How do you take the in between? Are you desperate to rush it? Are you in denial and I want to be in something that has ended? Who are you? What do you do? How are you in new chapter? Are you all excited and I want to learn? Are you like terrified by the task and feeling small and having an imposter syndrome and problem of legitimacy? Time and time again, it's very likely that you have the same pattern. So if you are going to, don't waste a crisis. If you're in transition, milk it, learn about it, because it's going to help you not only for this one, but for future ones. God knows they will come.
They will come. We know that they will come. You said, I am what you do. I am what I do, right? I am what I do. I think that's an amazing statement. I am what I do.
It's a good place to be.
It's a great place to be.
It's a good place to be.
Wow.
On my book, in terms of success, it's a good place to be.
Thank you so much, Jean-Christophe.
You're welcome, Julieta.
Thank you. Thank you. Very inspiring career, very inspiring transition, very inspiring life and journey. So thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
I hope you have enjoyed today's career conversations, and may they inspire you to align with what you value, choose what you consider meaningful, and thrive at what you do.